Get your pape, sir.
Penny a pape.
I imagine they say that a lot in this movie. I don't know. I've never seen it. Hey, welcome to Your Inner Child is an Idiot, the podcast where we look back on things from our childhood and see if they're any good. My name's DJ. What is wrong with you? Just say your name.
Literally the first word that I said was wrong. And it was literally, I couldn't decide between, and you'd think that this would be an easy way to cover it up. I couldn't decide between I am Damon, or hi, DJ, I'm Damon. And so rather than just like glide into one, because they both have the long I sound, I just froze up like a robot. Hi. If I was a computer, I'd have the wheel of death spinning in front of my face. Hi, I'm Damon.
Welcome to the show. I carry most of the weight of the show. If this is your first time here, Damon's mostly useless. Good for a crack or two along the way, but I'm really carrying the load here. We're going to watch Newsies today. We're going to talk about Newsies.
Disney's Newsies, I imagine, in the Library of Congress, it reads.
This will be my first Newsies experience. I've never seen this movie. Ever.
I feel like I've seen it twice, both times under duress.
Someone had a kitchen knife to your neck.
The academic equivalent of that, which was teacher has a hangover, she's putting on a movie today.
Planet Earth.
And then the second time was we had to watch it for my my chorus class that I took. Because I was such a good sportsman that I took general chorus.
Sure.
And I had to learn the choreography, DJ.
Okay.
To Seize the Day, which is one of the many songs in the musical Disney's Newsies.
Is there videographical evidence of this somewhere?
No, it all was destroyed in the mysterious fire that overtook the theater at
just
Beach High School.
Unrelatedly, can I get Phyllis's number real quick? No reason. We have to ask her something about cookies.
Luckily, my mother and father were such Luddites, they would have never purchased a video camera. We had to audition, even within general chorus, to learn this choreography.
That's not embarrassing at all.
That Ms. I want to say Altman?
There was a whole thing where, like, the general chorus, you couldn't make people audition because it's like, yeah, you have to offer this course.
I'm in the class.
But this is just their, like, backdoor way of making there be auditions.
I'm going to be in the chorus no matter what, but for specifically the dance to Newsies, will I be in the small cluster of students that are doing that dance in our review of music from TV and movies? That was our review that semester. Yeah. I had never done choreography in my life, and I have never done it since, if it gives you any idea how successful I was at it. It was one of the most anxiety-inducing...
I saw you when the Whip and Nay Nay was out. You've done choreography.
I don't understand how people learn choreography so fast. I love watching RuPaul's Drag Race. There's always a choreography challenge, and people are like, okay, we're going to do a step ball change, and then they know it like for the rest of time. They know their moves. I don't understand how people learn choreography, and they're like 1, 2, 3, 4, and then they'll like have their little leg out, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, and the legs out in the back, and I'm like, and then they just tack on like 16 other little steps on there, and I don't understand how people like commit that to memory. I was so bad, it gave me anxiety when I auditioned. No one laughed at anyone else. They laughed at me. It's tattooed on my brain.
So did you make it?
No.
Into the small cluster?
No, but thank you for asking. It still traumatizes me to this day. Re-traumatizes me.
I believe that there's a lot of things that you can learn if you like really, really want to, and the desire is where the talent comes in, because you have to be willing to like be bad for a long time. But there is absolutely, it's a fact that some people will just pick up stuff like that faster. Like I have, for no reason, I'm able to pick up stuff like that relatively fast. I'm not a dancer by any means, but I can like pick up. But there's also like, there's a like quiver full of moves that if you're like doing a lot of dance, this is several years of show choir speaking.
Please school me.
And so you just like, you have those moves. And so if somebody says step ball change, you know what that is. So they don't have to like teach that move. You just know, do a step ball change. But like for if you don't know that,
like I know what a step is.
Right.
I just need to learn the other two. So in a way, I'm ahead of the curve. I've got
like,
step.
It's a way of fast forwarding.
Change?
Yeah, it's a way of fast forwarding a learning, but it's like that only works if the person you're teaching knows those things. Otherwise, you got to start from scratch, and you're a bad teacher if you're just like step ball change to someone who clearly doesn't have the.
Oh, it's rough. The other memory I have of
it's not your fault.
Thank you,
Damon.
Thank you, Robin Williams. Oddly dramatic, Robin Williams. The other memory I have of Newsies is not actually my memory. I'm going to steal it from my friend Bethany. She would not often quote this, but at the end of this movie, minor spoilers ahead, they meet Joseph Pulitzer, played by beloved icon Robert Duvall. And he does something at some point where he calculates something in his head. He's calculating some sort of numbers. And Bethany laughed hysterically when he would go, that's what he does while he's calculating the numbers. He makes like a calculating sound, what I imagine a turn of the century calculator would sound like. She loved that. And so that's the only other memory I have of Newsies.
Sorry if this is a stupid question, but this is a musical?
Yes.
Okay.
Do you remember that period? I had this. I don't know if other people had this. To me, this isn't so much anymore, not that Disney owns the world, but there was a period where it was like you had Disney animated movies that were more or less good, and then you had live action movies, and you're like, this is shit. This is hot garbage that you're forcing down my throat. And then that sort of moved, they sort of pushed that onto the Disney Channel, where they were like, what if we even take the small bits of quality we had in our live action movies, completely get rid of that. And just have Raven-Symoné mug for 28 minutes straight.
And I'm sure, like, we'll give them 1/20th of the budget, too.
Right.
You're like,
we're making Cheetah Girls 6, and you have to bring your own lunches. Let's go.
This is Christian Bale's in this. Who else?
Baby Christian Bale is in this, and that is and Robert Duvall is in this.
Duvall.
And I call him
Bobby because we're friends on set. Bobby.
That's all I could say off the top of my head of who's in Newsies.
Is this this is Baby Christian Bale's like first thing, right? Or first like.
Well, I mean, he was in like what is that? Empire of the Sun? Is that what I'm thinking of?
Oh.
He was in some. I mean, he's like a teenager in this, and he was in a few movies where he was a kid. Oh, I forgot that they made a fucking Broadway musical because we're also in like that period of Broadway where just make a bunch of fucking movies people have already seen and just do that again.
Just do it exactly like that.
The tourists will love it. I don't recognize anyone else in this cast, so it's not looking promising. You know Andy Richardson?
Yeah, he's my brother.
We have Bill Pullman. So that's something.
Have any missiles?
The guy who was from your movie with the Minnesota Twins and the kid who owns them.
First baseman guy. That guy?
No, the kid who owns the thing. The kid, the little big league or whatever it is. Yeah, he's in this.
What year did this come out?
92.
Okay, so around the same time. I don't know why I thought this was much older. That's why I was like, what was he, like, 0?
Well, you know what I think threw you off? It's set in the early 1900s.
Oh, I see.
You thought Christian Bale was 120 years old.
I was wondering why it was in color. Okay, so we're going to watch Newsies.
Why did they get that 80-year-old man to play Batman? It's too dangerous.
I can't wait for people who like Newsies just be so angry. Just we're not even sharing any opinions yet, but just that we don't know things about this movie. I feel like there's some Newsies out there. That's what we call people who like the Newsies.
Newsies. I don't know why. I feel like
we'll find out. Maybe we'll find out.
I feel like this is one of those movies that the babysitter put on, and that's why people love it.
Yeah,
and now they get angry if you say any malign thing about Newsies. And it's like, have you actually sat down and watched movies? Which is pretty much the premise our show was built on. Don't talk to me about Newsies until you've actually put in the work, your adult life work into Newsies.
Make sure you take away any joy you feel about anything.
You know that thing you like? I didn't, and that's why you're a piece of shit.
Watch along with us and find out the truth. extra, read all about it. That's my newsie telling you about how you can support your local.
Go on.
I mean, podcasts are really like the newspapers of today.
And just like Joseph Pulitzer, we're making it up as we go along.
You might say that newspapers are the newspapers of today, but no, it's podcasts. So support us, or else we'll be poor, like poor old Joe Pulitzer. And
yeah, we'll have to turn our pockets out, like people who are poor do, and then like a moth would fly out, and then if things get really sketchy, we'll have to get one of those barrels with the suspenders,
Yeah. You don't want to see us look at the ground, say, "Aw, shucks," and kick a can. You don't want that, and we don't want it either. Go to patreon.com/Your Inner Child's an Idiot. Support the podcast. I would say it's a penny a podcast, but you can't go that low. But
inflation, inflation's on the rise.
It's roughly equivalent. Support us there, and maybe someday we'll get out of this hard luck, hard scrabble life, just like William Randolph Hearst did. And we are back, and we're talking in our accents. And our turn of the century, New York accents over here.
Who swiped my stickball?
I was playing stickball over here. I was doing a hoop with the stick thing.
I got my socks over my knickerbockers.
We watched Newsies, and I hope you did too, because otherwise the accent's probably not as funny.
No, yeah, they probably just think we're doing like a really squeaky Bugs Bunny. But honestly, I felt like everyone else was doing a Bugs Bunny in this movie, which Disney probably hated.
Oh, yeah. They're like, that's not ours yet.
Soon.
Okay, I got this one. I'm going to recap this movie real quick.
Okay. Dibs. Okay.
Picture this. 1899, New York. How do people get their news? From the pape.
Oh,
Pick up a pape. Who's going to give the papes out? You can't just get them delivered. Well, you can. You can in the morning edition.
Could we have like a kiosk maybe on a street corner where just the paper is available when I walk by on my way to
Listen.
the child
you
labor
could just
factory?
get the morning edition. But what are you going to do about the afternoon? News happens. It's breaking like crazy.
Couldn't I get the afternoon edition on my way back from work?
No, you need a human being to give you the extra edition and yell extra because. It's just a little catchier.
How much about it should I read?
All.
Okay. I think I'm getting this vision of a fantasy world where we get our news in print.
And you want immigrant children to do that for you. That's where you get the Newsies. They're a ragtag bunch, hard scrabble kids, mostly orphans and children of immigrants, and they sell the afternoon edition after school, maybe.
I assume they're all going to school. I mean, they can't be that hard scrabble because, they got the hat named after them, They're probably getting some money, some kickbacks every time someone buys a Pageboy cap.
But, there's some disparity between the Newsies that sell you the paper and the monkey mucks that create the paper.
The newsmen.
Your William Randolph Hearsts, your Joe Pulitzers. And they decide to jack up the price a little bit. And
for the readers?
No, not for the readers. For the Newsies themselves. And they're already at, they're barely making anything. They're barely making ends meet as it is. And they decide, through the pure charisma of Batman, of a young Batman, they decide, a young Bruce Wayne, they decide...
A once and future Batman.
Once and future, and then past again, Batman, that they're going to strike. There's a Newsboys strike. Don't say Newsboys, that's a Christian group, I think. But
no, they would never strike.
The Newsies strike, and through song, dance, and justice, they finally get their way.
The three tricks to nonviolent direct
triple threat.
action.
Sing, I dance, and I do justice. And, the power of the people is nothing to shake an old-timey stick at. And so they get their way. Eventually, Pulitzer capitulates. And
That'll sell in your newspapers.
They get their the price back down, and then they agree to sell papes again. Thanks, Teddy Roosevelt. He's also there. We'll talk about that more later.
I got something to say about him.
That's a little, and then Damon does the dance for us.
Come on, son, see you today, and step balls kick, step ball pause, step ball something. Got my little, I Dream of Jeannie arm motion that they were doing. That was fun, huh? When
That's pretty much it.
I just want to say, because I addressed in the introduction, when they finally got to Seize the Day, which, by the way, was creeping up my spine, trigger warning, please. When I saw the dances, I was like, in what universe would you just foist this dance upon untrained kids just looking to get their show choir credit?
Listen, okay. I'm not like a trained dancer, but I have some dance experience, right? I'm in show choir. I'm currently in a band that performs. I'm not going to pretend like I'm an excellent dancer, but I feel like I know enough to evaluate a dance. That is ridiculous that they would have non-dancers do that, any portion of that dance, unless it was just a couple of moves. Like, because any string of 8 moves from that dance would be pretty ridiculous. Now, maybe there was some like dumbed down version. It might
have been dumbed down, but when they did that arm thing, I was like, no, I remember that. The
part.
Kicking, the little kicks.
They're pretty like
Elaine's little kicks, but more on time.
This is, it's not the Rockettes, but it's, it's Broadway level.
Don't the
Rockettes
dancing. Just kick?
I mean, they kick really high though.
No, yeah, but I mean,
I meant in terms of precision, it's a pretty, there's no reason that you would be able to do that.
Absolutely. That's exactly what my body also said.
So, full credit to your younger self for being like, what the fuck?
Absolutely. And boo, hiss to Mrs. Mahan, our show choir teacher, who thought to pull that fast one on me.
When I think, it just goes to show, like every Disney film of a certain ilk, boo adults,
Boo adults, indeed. Yeah, they're really going for that post-apocalyptic kids rule the world, children of the corn style thing. Boo adults. Yeah, every adult except for Bill Pullman and charming Anne Margaret in a role that I didn't understand why it was part of this, but I was happy.
And Teddy Roosevelt.
I was happy
Don't forget
that
Teddy
she was
Roosevelt.
having a good time. I was happy she was there having a good time. TR shows up, breaking
the bull
up
moose
monopolies.
himself.
TJ.
Yeah.
So my first question was this filmed on the Hollywood Studios lot in Orlando, Florida? Everything, like the Seinfeld New York City outdoor set looks more realistic to New York than this really does.
It's very
set-y.
Yeah, it's very musical theater set, which I think, to say they were like going for it maybe is giving them too much credit. But I mean, I think everybody was okay with that. I think they were like, this is a musical and it looks like a musical.
I need really wide roads so everyone can dance and kick a little bit, kicks.
Step ball change.
And maybe like mime a horse riding sequence in a weird thrusting fashion. Well, then steal a horse.
And then he gets on a horse.
The opening number, which I believe is Carrying the Banner, which is about them carrying the New York banner. That's their paper, these Newsies, these boys of the news. Tyler had my favorite line while we were watching the opening sequences. They all wake up in various states of undress and said, some of these boys ain't boys. I felt like there was too many jacked 16-year-olds being forced upon me. And I was like, please, movie, don't do this. I felt
don't make it sound like you brought the sexualization to the party. I feel like
when people are half naked, there's a weird sexualization. And there's like one kid who is like jacked.
Yes.
But he's definitely not 18. And I was like, I don't want you to do this. Are you talking about
the kid who was like shoeing a horse?
No, I didn't. No, they're in the first scene when they're all like getting up. There is one kid who is like full on 6-pack abs. Yeah. And I'm like, I'm going to need you to put a shirt on, young man.
Yeah, there's a kid later, and I don't know, maybe it's the same kid, but I don't think so, because he wasn't a newsie. He was like, when they were getting the other kid unions involved, he was like shoeing a horse, and it was like Cena-esque.
No, No, I do remember that man. He's just wearing an apron and otherwise topless.
Yes.
Yes, I did remember him. Tyler also noted that young man. I don't think he was a newsie. I think they were just handing out their newsie-made paper. Yeah.
He's shoeing a horse.
But I don't think he was underage. Like, that one was like, that's fine.
You could say
that's a fetish. That's fine.
Well, I read a little bit about...
The other kids, like, put some clothes on.
About the actual Newsies strike, and they were...
a lot more naked than you thought.
There was a lot more nudity. No, they were like... Most of the, I'm sure there were kids of all ages, but like they're mostly like 17, 18, 19, like the sort of more young adults, which makes sense that would be who would lead. And I think Jack is supposed to be, what, like 17 in this? 16, 17?
He's 17.
He's an older
I think they say that
kid.
a few times.
Yeah. Which I guess is kind of surprising, because I always thought of this as like, again, I've never seen it, but like I always thought of it as like kids, and it is kids, but it's like, oh, this makes more sense.
Well, I mean, I think they do a good job representing a variety of ages in these kids, and some of them are, disturbingly young, having to work
usually used
a job
for their like cuteness, like
right.
the little brother, the little big league kid.
Yeah,
Luke
I've
Edwards.
seen pictures. I remember I saw a picture of like actual Newsies, like an actual contemporaneous photograph of Newsies. They all look like they had old man heads on little child bodies. They do have cigars. The one from Doogie Howser who's constantly smoking in this.
Yeah.
That's accurate. I was a little disturbed because it felt like they were all getting up and they're all having fun. They're singing their song, but I'm like, the daylight streaming in, I'm like, boys, it's like 10 a.m. You've missed the rush to the offices of the factories. Like, who are you selling papers to? And apparently there's just boxing matches that break out in the middle of the street. But it felt like this,
Pugilism.
I could have used a little less daylight streaming in, because it felt like it was like 11:45 by the time they were singing their song.
They didn't make this clear, but I found it in my reading that they were actually usually selling the afternoon edition, because most people would get their morning paper delivered, probably by other underpaid labor or children, but like
there's always underpaid labor.
Yeah. Someone's being exploited somewhere. That's capitalism. But they like these particular, and the Newsies that struck, they were typically going to some sort of schooling earlier in the day, and then later they'd get the afternoon paper, and that's why they were doing extra. Read all about it. It was the like afternoon edition. So,
but they're just waking up in this world.
Yeah, I think there was a little bit of like I said, the movie didn't explain any of this. It was later that I was like, oh, okay, because I had the same sort of question. That was like, what's going on here? It seems like but it's also like, I don't think they're really worried about the timeline of each day.
Well, they also, later on when they're actually picking up their papes, which is short for newspaper.
Okay.
You probably were lost the entire movie.
It comes from the French fille de papier, which means piece of paper.
Then they buy their papers, and they're just like standing around talking and listening to everyone else buy papers, and probably singing a song later on when they're heading to the place where they're going to sell the papers. And I wrote that it's a pretty lazy start to the day for these child laborers in all caps.
Yeah, and I think the timeline still doesn't really check out, but like if you think that like, they get out of school, like when did we get out of school? Like early afternoon.
Yeah, 3.
They like go down there, they're goofing around, they get their papers, but like people aren't getting out of work until later, like 5, so maybe they have a little time. I don't know. I don't think it's important. But most importantly, we get kids, not only kids acting, kids singing, but kids doing those things in accents. Which is, I think, both of our favorite thing.
Yes, it's a real trinity of things I love. The accents were a little over, as I said, they were a little bit Bugs Bunny. Hey, it's New York over here. Who's looking at these boys? Too much. And then you got the singing. I couldn't place this. I'm not a singing expert, but I didn't think necessarily they were individually bad singers, but they were atrocious ensemble singers. Like
it's all just like
some
union
flinty voices.
Yeah.
And it seemed like all over the place. I also had trouble understanding what everyone was singing half the time.
Welcome to every musical I've ever seen. That's usually my problem.
Because it's a lot of ensemble, like everyone's singing at once, much like a Greek chorus, but very little, unless it's like Jack or occasionally David, very few, like, aside from like a one line here and there of actual like individuals coming out and singing a verse or something. So there's a lot of ensemble singing, and I'm like, what's that? Who's that? Probably didn't help that they're all doing these like turn of the century
accents of varying degrees of quality. You needed
Skid Row accents.
You needed the Disney Channel version where they do the bouncing ball on the songs. So
I think it will be a bouncing Mickey Mouse head because there's never a chance to miss out for some branding.
So there's in the trivia, again, grain of salt. I don't even know if this was from IMDb. I think I just read this, that it was like Christian Bale didn't know this was a musical when he was originally cast.
Oh, I saw he didn't want his friends to know it was a musical.
See, I heard somewhere, now again, whether this is true or not, but it was like somewhere in the casting process he found out, of course, but like it seemed like originally he didn't think
it would be weird if he had been singing this whole time and he's like, oh, I thought we were just like having fun.
But it seems as if maybe he wasn't the only one to whom this was a surprise that they would be singing. There was a lot of, I don't know, there's a lot of, I think it kind of works in most cases because they're just these like, you know, little hard scrabble kids and they're rough around the edges, you know, and they're like singing a lot. And then every once in a while you hear like a nice vibrato and you're like, oh, that kid can actually sing a little bit. And Christian Bale, for example, he gets a couple of lines where you're like, okay. It's not like he's not like setting the world on fire with his singing voice, but he's got a good voice.
Yeah, I don't think that was back to my point of I think there's a lot of individual singers here, and when they all sing together, I'm like, please, you have to stop.
Yeah,
just pick a designated leader of the group to sing, and the rest of you just crutchy, sit down. I got overwhelmed with the singing. This is my larger point, but I think the musical aspects of this are the worst parts of this story. And I like musicals, and I like Alan Menken, who did the music for this. He did it with Jack Feldman, who did the lyrics. But all the music in this seems like it was spat out by a Broadway robot. Like, they all sound like they could be from any failed musical ever. I don't know if there's many of these songs that I even recall the melodies
I'm
to.
The king of New York.
That one was, I would say, is probably the best song. I do lean towards more happy-go-lucky songs.
Yeah, same here.
And that was a good
Santa Fe parenthetical reprise. Those were not your favorite? No,
Santa Fe, of all the places to go.
I hate to disagree with you, but these...
Do you?
No, I love it. It's one of my favorite things. I actually liked these songs more than I thought.
Okay.
I had pretty low expectations because I had never been like, oh yeah, that's... You know, there's like songs of musicals I've never actually seen, but you're like, that's from that musical. Like, I've never had a song from Newsies like that because I'm like, how good can these be? But I thought they were pretty good. I like King of New York. I like Seize the Day. Like, honestly, the dance was the best part of it. What else? I can't think of any of the names of the songs right now. But.
Well, I mean, Carrying the Banner, High. What's the one that What's Her Fuck sings? High Times, Hard Times. That won a Razzie Award.
That was weird. That was a weird selection.
The 1992 Razzie Award for Worst Song in a Movie.
Yeah, that was... Okay, so what were we doing there? So Anne Margaret plays... I can't remember her character's name, but she plays someone who has kind of taken Christian Bale's character under her wing a little bit, and she is putting on... Like, it's not exactly burlesque. It's not really, like, risque.
No, it felt like it was... I felt like it was originally in the original first draft of the script, it was probably burlesque, and Disney was like, no, you're going to do one of those stage numbers where you're just wearing a frilly dress and carrying an umbrella. And they're like, I don't think that's really a thing. That's not really a style of theater. And they're like, it is now. Now swing. And Margaret, swing on this giant swing. Yeah, I don't know what that was supposed to be. And there was part of me that was like, why did you hire Anne Margaret to be in this? She's in an initial scene when Christian Bale and David first meet up, and she
seems like she's going to be a more important part.
Yeah, it seems
Yeah.
like she's going to be like a maternal figure, like Nancy from Oliver Twist, but she's just sort of there in that first scene when you meet her, and then when they have this sort of big number in the musical for her to sing, it almost felt like a little bit like when Bette Midler sings in Hocus Pocus, and it's like this was part of her contract, wasn't it?
Yeah, because it's like there's actually could be an interesting thing there. Like she's providing real refuge as opposed to the place called the Refuge, which is a prison. For
That's a good point. Because that guy then comes in, the guy who runs the Refuge, and busts it up.
But it doesn't flesh out because they have their big meeting there, and that scene is important. Like that they agree to not be violent anymore there, which is a thing that actually happened in the Newsies strike. I learned because they had been basically soaking scabs. Which you don't want to do. But you want to let that scab heal naturally.
Yeah, don't soak it. Let it dry out and crust.
Yeah. And so they agreed to no longer soak scabs at that meeting. And so it was like, and she hosts the meeting, and they had to have somewhere to do that. And it's a big theater, so it showed like the force that they had gathered of all the different boroughs. So like, it's an important scene, but it's like the music number. And I understand they wanted to have a musical number in there, but it's just her singing, and the Newsies kind of like chasing her around. It's weird.
I think there's a lot of times in a musical where there's a song that it might have been like something that the lyricist or the composer just had on the back burner for any other project, and they just never had a place to put it. And sometimes those songs just like pop into a musical, and they're usually fun and like upbeat.
That was King of New York. Apparently, was like a later edition,
really?
Which is funny. Like it's one of the best ones, I think. They were just like, we need something fun here. And they were like, poop, 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 here's a song. And they were like, okay, that's pretty good.
Here's all the kids daydreaming about what they would do with their money or whatever.
Yeah.
This felt like that, where it was just like, here's something that'll become a standard. And it's just sort of vaguely about, having a hard life. And then sometimes the life is good. And then sometimes life is bad. And, some gay kid's going to sing it at karaoke one day.
This will be an audition number for show choirs years to come.
But yeah, it did just sort of felt shoehorned in. And I mean, those songs often feel very shoehorned in, but if they're really good,
but if they're fun, if they stand alone, then it's still like, okay, this is fun. But this doesn't really stand on its own 2 feet, that's for sure. So, I mean, I think there's a good, I agree with you, I guess is what I'm saying. I think Anne Margaret, like, I like Anne Margaret, and she doesn't particularly doing anything wrong. I don't hate the way she plays the character, or you know what I mean? It's not anything like that. It's just like, what are we doing here? What is this? Right. And this song is not particularly strong.
You've actually made a better case than me actually watching it together.
Which is not a good sign for the movie, I don't think, usually.
I mean, it's not that I hated the songs outright. They just, I thought, were all very by the numbers, forgettable songs. Like Christian Bale gets his "I Want" song, like in any musical, and it's about how he wants to get out of New York and go to Santa Fe and become a cowboy, maybe. But it's such a fill in the blanks, like Mad Lib's "I Want" song, like writing an "I Want" song for Broadway for dummies, and just fill in the blanks. It's not bad, and he sings it competently, and thank God it's not an ensemble piece. Yeah, it's 5 out of 10.
Right. I think there's a really fine line between sort of trying to do something classic and then doing something that's cliche, right? Mm-hmm. And I think for me, it fell like the songs mostly fell on the better side of that line for me, and it sounds like they fell slightly on the other side of that line for you. And I think that's fine. Like, I think it's so close that I'm like, and I'm not like humming most of the songs right now, so that I think that proves your point to some degree, where I'm not, other than King of New York and a little bit of some of the other ones, I can't really think of the names, which, I don't have a great memory, so there's that too. But it's not like immediately where you're like, let's rewind that song and listen to it. But I do think they're mostly fun, and I think importantly, we need to just go ahead and move on to the most important person in this movie, Billy Pulse.
Bill Pulse.
Bill Pullman plays a reporter for not the newspaper they deliver, The Sun, right?
Yeah, he writes for the New York Sun, which I don't know if that's Hearst's paper. I meant to look that up, but I didn't.
Can't remember.
So fuck you. I did write. I don't know. I've never been crazy about Bill Pullman.
Wow.
Sorry. I feel like I talked about it in the Independence Day one. But
Doesn't anybody have any missiles?
Doesn't
anybody have any papes?
I wrote down, he says at one point, it all depends on you, to the kids. And I was like, okay, Bill, I don't know what movie you think you're in, but you're in a musical version of the Newsies strike made by Disney. It's going to be the poorest selling musical that year. He's just so... I feel like Bill Pullman always plays it, every movie, the same note. Like, it's always the same level. I feel like this is like his standard, I'm sort of dramatic. And this is Bill Pullman, like, I'm going to pause when I talk. I'm going to look after I say the line, not during the line. I look away when I'm saying the line. I look towards you when I'm done saying the line. The Catherine O'Hara School of Acting.
I thought, so his character is...
Again, he is not bad. He is not distractingly bad, but I just kept going, wow, Bill Pullman. They just put him in an old-timey suit, but otherwise the exact same guy.
He's pretty handsome in the old-timey suit.
Yeah.
He's got an okay voice.
Just because he's attractive doesn't mean he gets a A+.
I thought that was exactly what it meant.
Usually, actually, for me, that is what that means.
He plays a reporter that's a Union sympathizer, you could say, right? Like he
right. He's a former foreign correspondent.
Yeah,
he covered the Spanish-American War.
Yeah,
with TR, and now he's covering the Newsies strike, and his newspaper is the only newspaper covering the Newsies strike. All the others are mum on it. Mm-hmm. And his is covering it until later, eventually, they sideline them and say, hey, you're the foreign correspondent, and now go not write about Newsies somewhere
Get
across
out of
the
here.
world.
Get the hell out of here. But he helps them print their newsletter.
Right, that is finally, they come up with the idea that I had about 20 minutes in, which was, hey, why don't you... write your own little newsletter and distribute it because you've got all the distribution abilities. But it apparently took, an hour and 30 to get to that point? And he helps them write it, and it saves the day that they previously were seizing.
Well,
the day was saved after it was seized.
They were trying to seize it, and then they saved it.
Yeah, good point. So you liked Bill Pullman?
I thought he did well.
Yeah, he's fine.
Yeah, I didn't. Yeah, no one in this is like. Okay, that's not true. There is one person in this who we already know.
I think we all know.
We all know who we're talking about. Who makes some choices that are transcendent. Everyone else in this does.
I just remembered another choice he made that I laughed
Let's talk
really hard
about it.
at.
So we got to talk about
Bobby Duvs.
Robert Duvall plays Joe Pulitzer's the ostensible villain. Not ostensible. He's the villain in this movie. He's
Boo Hiss. He's got a mustache. He tied a woman to a train track in a deleted scene.
Yeah.
It was an out of commission train track in his defense.
I mean, that was a new move in 1899. So
we just got these train tracks. You tying ladies to them?
I don't know anything about Joseph Pulitzer, the person. I don't know if historically he was known to be kind of weird and make, weird choices in how to say
calculator noises.
I think those were all Bobby Duvall. I
have a feeling that Robert Duvall's like, no one's going to see this crap. I'm going to do whatever I want.
And I think it's pretty fun because, it's the classic people who play villains get to villains have all the fun. I feel like.
Absolutely. I mean, that is the Disney rule is the villains are going to be fun and everyone else will be borderline forgettable.
Yeah. If Bill Pullman had made all these choices,
if he could have played a gayer, that would have been the true Disney way.
Because they're the real enemies.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, do you want to give some examples? So you already did the calculator noise.
He did the calculator thing. There is a scene where he finally, Jack gets to come into his office, and Jack shows him all the Newsies out in the square chanting, and Robert Duvall does this hand motion. It was a little bit like, you remember at the end of the Tracy Ullman show? This might be a memory just for me. At the end of her 80s show where The Simpsons originally debuted, she would do this thing like, go home at the end of the show. That's kind of what Robert Duvall is doing. He says, go home, but he does it in the motion of like, I've got a quilt that I've got, some dry dust on, and
or
I just
like
want to billow it out he doesn't like
scarecrow
wave his arms. He doesn't wave his arms from up on high like one of those weird sprinklers. He doesn't do that, which is what you'd do if you were telling people to go home. He takes his hands from below and waves them up about halfway up his body, like you would if you were shaking out a blanket. And he says, go home, go home. It's very odd, very singular motion that seemed like he had just entered a human body. He was just working out the kinks still.
It is very like wearing an Edgar suit from Men in Black. Like he makes a lot of like weird choices, and they're usually repeating something that just makes the whole cadence feel weird. So sometimes it's not this like big bold choice like that. Sometimes it's just literally like he'll be like, "Isn't that what you want? What you want?" And you're just like, wait, what? Why did you say that twice? That's not a real line. It's just like stuff like that where you're just like, what?
Yeah, he was very odd. I don't know much about Pulitzer, the man, except I think the term yellow journalism started with Pulitzer's papers. He left out getting that prize named after him because I think he wasn't a very ethical journalist in terms of like running a newspaper. And I think the storyline here where he and Jack are sort of the tension between them as they're really fighting for power over who's going to tell the Newsies story. Because Joseph Pulitzer, other characters describe him as the most powerful man in New York because he is deciding how these stories will be told. And he can leave out or omit or just ignore a story completely on a whim if he doesn't want that story to be told.
Which Jack learns from. He like changes the headlines to sell them, basically. He's like...
Yeah.
Reads the paper in full. He understands what actually is going on, at least what's being reported. But then he'll say, "There's a fire" or whatever, and then he's like, "What are you talking about?" It's like page 9, and it's like this tiny story. There's like a dumpster fire or something. You know what I mean? But
yeah,
I think that's funny that sort of how that echoes what's really going on in the newspaper too. Is it's like he's stretching the truth that's already stretched. And
right. I mean, it's probably one of the more prescient parts of this movie. Yeah. One of the parts of the story that I think they do an admirable job, but I get distracted by all the weird modern dance numbers with all these newsboy kids running around. I did write down back and forth between Christian Bale and Robert Duvall. I wanted to call him Randolph. Probably William Randolph Hearst. You bribing me, Joe? And then Robert Duvall responds with, no. He does this weird, like, stuttering no. He's not saying no. He goes, no. It's a weird characterization.
I love it. It's the best. It's the best thing about this movie, other than just some random orphans dirty pawing some unwrapped candy, which I always love.
Ugh. There's sticky, probably already sticky hands on the sticky candy.
Please don't do that. Please don't do that.
Attention, children alive in 1899. Please don't do that.
There's a flu coming. You've got a few years, but there's a flu coming.
And them spitting on their hands and then shaking hands. I think at one point, the second time they did it, I was like, do you know anything about germ theory at this point in history? Please don't do that. I did... This movie has a weird motif of people staring aggressively at inanimate buildings. That's one of the motifs of this movie. It starts when they arrive during the first musical number. They arrive at the banner, and they're just staring at the banner's building. They're just staring at the building, and I'm like, "What are you doing?" Mostly because it's ensemble singing, so I had to go off of context clues and blocking to be like, and what are they? I assume they're Newsies based on the title card, but the rest is very vague. They seem very mad at this building, but they weren't even mad at the building yet. And then, of course, when they're seizing the day, they're standing around this statue. I didn't catch who the statue was of. Did you? It's
No,
a
I don't
very,
think so.
it must have been a very expensive statue because they milk the fuck out of the fact that they have this statue because like several key scenes happen outside of this statue. I'm assuming that's outside the Banner building, but the movie opens with like a newsie asleep in the arms of this seated statue, and then they're always constantly gathering around it, doing their little kicks
Horace
outside
Greeley.
for seas. Horace Greeley, one of our favorite adventurers.
I think everybody knows that Horace Greeley
Our third president.
is just someone. He's just someone who.
Go on, keep going.
I mean, he was born in 1811, but died in 1872.
Okay, now that gives me an idea. Yeah.
He was an American newspaper editor and publisher, founder and editor of the New York Tribune.
Okay, there we go.
So, also
But
lost.
Tyler did say that he was like, why are they always around the statue? And I was like, because they probably paid a lot for that statue.
He lost to Ulysses S. Grant. In the,
He ran for president?
I guess so.
That's a shame.
Yeah. Or he was the unsuccessful candidate. I don't know. I'm done.
Or did he try to primary him? Did he run against him in the primary?
No, he was the presidential nominee for the new Liberal Republican Party's presidential nominee. Lost in a landslide despite having additional support from the Democratic Party. Wow. Devastated by the death of his wife 5 days before the election, and he died 1 month later before the Electoral College met. Jesus Christ.
Horace!
Have a statue,
You're just
buddy.
not...
Have a statue and rest.
You can have a statue as a treat. Also, in addition to staring at building scene, there's a scene where when they're still soaking the scabs, and then those strike breakers come out with their chains and bats and what have you, and there's a big all-out brawl outside Weasels, little stand. Eventually, Brooklyn arrives because that's a few scenes earlier they had made a deal with the Newsies of Brooklyn. And with the spitting handshake. And Brooklyn arrives, and Brooklyn's just sort of like on the rooftops, and like everyone just keeps pointing, Brooklyn, Brooklyn! And I'm like, you can't just arrive. You're going to have to join in the fight, Brooklyn. It took forever. It felt like the chimney rooftop dance scene in Mary Poppins, where they're just like, choo-roo, choo-roo. And I'm like, you got to get down here. We're fighting now. You can't
They were
just
doing a
arrive.
Gandalf arriving with the sunset thing. Sunrise.
But at least Gandalf brought the Rohirrim down the hill eventually.
Eventually, he took his time. Let's be honest. If you like staring at buildings and large adults of authority punching children, this is the movie for you.
Now, let's not joke. I do enjoy an adult punching a child when that child's being annoying.
Like fighting for their rights.
Yeah, it's real putting a cramp in my style.
Do you have any issue, like not issue, but any like, wait, what? With Disney putting out such a staunchly pro-union movie? Walt Disney famously accused his the people, the cartoonists who unionized in the 40s. So well before this happened in fiction, in 1899, well before
right.
the
well after the
Newsies
strike,
the actual Newsies strike.
Before the musical Newsies strike.
Right, yeah, exactly. Sorry, I did not explain that correctly. But he not only tried to bust the union when all the other studios were like, yeah, okay. He also, even after acquiescing to some of their demands, would turn in his animators, most of the union organizers, as communists during the Red Scare, and had them blacklisted and their lives ruined.
Yeah, Walt Disney was a fucking bastard.
Yeah. When did he die? Did he die before this came out?
He died in the, I think, maybe mid to late 60s. He definitely was dead in 1992.
Okay, so that's how we got away with this.
He was dead and frozen.
66, okay. So he'd been dead for 30 years, and his head was just starting to thaw. So I guess we're okay.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised by. There's a very interesting thing in this movie about sort of media control of the news, and there's an interesting element of like pro-unionization in this movie. And I think the 90s were kind of in a weird lull where I think there were a lot of people who thought that unions are safe, don't worry about it. But I think now we know, like, that's
Yeah, so
that's not the case.
There's definitely been consolidation by the 90s, but not to this degree that it's happened now, and where like
I think that there was a period like where we believed that the unionization efforts of the early 1900s were like behind us. That's set. Everyone's happy.
You got your 9 to 5. You got your 40-hour work week,
and it sort of had. I mean, if
got
it's
your
gotten to
penny
the
a
point
pay.
where it can be Disneyfied, I mean that I feel like is like safe territory. Like Disney's not saying we're gonna really open people's eyes up to the strength of unions and workers' rights. I feel like it's one of those feel good stories at the time, but I think. Might have sat on our laurels for a few decades.
This is one of those things too, like when you watch, like something like, I don't know, it's the race version would be like something like Remember the Titans or whatever, where we all watch it and we're like, we all know this is right now. Mm-hmm. Whereas like apparently there was a huge number of people sitting at home being like, I don't fucking know about this.
I don't think I want to remember these Titans.
I had no idea there were so many people watching Star Wars being like, I kind of like what the Empire guys were talking about. Like... that planet was being a little bitch.
Get good, planet.
Get good.
Anyway.
Yeah, it's not great. Not great, Damon. It's not great. But at least there's no way that any sort of politician of power would be influenced by rich businessmen trying to break up a strike. Not now. Like, not today. That would never happen.
No. They certainly wouldn't just like in the 80s when the air traffic controllers went on strike and Reagan just like told the airports to just hire new ones, and that was the end of the strike. And they all scabbers, definite scabbers.
They did not soak those scabbers. So.
No, I'm afraid not. Not even scabbers from Harry Potter could be soaked.
So I have an attachment to the character of Theodore Roosevelt, having spent some time in Western North Dakota.
Mm-hmm. If this was a business letter, you would type at the bottom enclosure.
Yes.
Because you have an attachment.
Sure. I thought you were going to do like, my dearest Theodore. Teddy Roosevelt is the governor of New York at this time. He is
former police commissioner of New York.
Yeah, and he was all true. Teddy Roosevelt did all that stuff. He led the...
Teddy Roosevelt, not many people know, was a real man.
He was assistant secretary of the Navy.
Oh, look at you.
He, of course, then became vice president. McKinley was shot, and then they put him... The thing that happened is people of power put him in the vice presidency because they wanted him out of the way. They wanted to be like, okay, he's popular enough, give him something, but he won't be able to do anything as vice president. Then McKinley gets shot, and it was like, fuck. And then he became... Teddy Roosevelt.
No, he was always actually little correction. He was always Teddy Roosevelt.
But before
he became president.
But before that, he was Theodore, and then he became I don't know. So he plays a small role in this, and I always think it's weird because he's such an outsized historical character. When like he does have a couple lines in the beginning because you don't quite see who it is, and he's like, "Thank you for bringing this to my attention," and then later he's like, very visible on screen as he's like taking Jack on a victory lap, but he doesn't say anything. And there's a lot of weird opportunities where Jack's like, hey, thanks for the advice, Teddy. Hey, thank you so much. I really appreciate all the words you said to me. And Teddy Roosevelt's just like
silently nodding,
like slapping him on the back. It's like,
yeah, it was a very weird choice to like include such a big historical figure and then also have him like almost play a glorified extra where he's just sort of in the background. I kept waiting. It seemed like a role that you would have saved for like a really big name to play, like as a big cameo at the end, like Orson Welles at the end of the Muppet movie. Like, oh, okay.
But you wanted him to break in and be like, Taft was a flub up with the streak of the second rate.
But he didn't hate Taft yet.
Not yet.
He will.
This is a pre-endorsement of Taft, pre-presidency, like all before that. So,
but yeah, it seemed very awkward because then he's just sort of there, and there's like, hey, there's that guy that vaguely looks like Teddy Roosevelt in the background. Yeah. And it also seemed to me that he seemed to be doing a FDR impression. It was very weird that he was dressed as Teddy Roosevelt, but seemed to be conducting himself like FDR, constantly smiling and sort of leaning forward. I don't know. The whole thing was just weird. I kept waiting. I knew that Teddy Roosevelt would appear, the amount of times they kept talking about it, and that
Right.
little story that Jack had of like, no, I got ridden around town by Teddy Roosevelt. It felt like, okay, we're going to see him.
Right.
But then it sort of fell flat. I wouldn't be surprised if someone said, we actually were trying to get, I don't know, so-and-so to play Teddy Roosevelt.
The ghost of Teddy Roosevelt.
We were actually trying to get
We held hands. We
the
did the
corpse
seance.
of Teddy Roosevelt.
It didn't work. Disney
Mostly
had...
because ghosts can't appear on camera. They can't be captured on film. Ask any ghost hunter.
They can't see their reflection. So...
That's why
Teddy
they're so
Roosevelt's
mad.
a vampire? I don't know. I lost the thread. Yeah, I think we touched on everything I have.
I do want to say Tyler was very excited. Tyler loves a fashion montage, but even more than that, because they're so rare, he loves a typesetting montage, which is included in this movie. For all you Kerning fans, come on down and watch Newsies, or at least maybe the last third of Newsies.
They did a pretty good job of that.
No, it was a pretty good leaflet they made.
Yeah.
Giving it out to all the shirtless hot guys in town.
You ready to go to the verdict?
Yes.
Let's go. Get your verdict here. Extra, extra.
Extra, extra.
Damon, what is your verdict?
Hi, DJ. Thank you for asking. Your inner child is an idiot.
Whoa.
This movie is weird. I felt like there is, as we sort of touched on, I feel like there's a very interesting story and a very prescient story about unionization, workers' rights, maybe not making children work for a living, and also the power of, a wealthy person who has control of the media to then also control the narrative of history at the same time. And those things are sort of touched on in this movie, but then there's also this musical element. And I don't even think that
They're just singing the song instead of talking about serious stuff.
No, but I mean, it's not that couldn't work, but I think the combination of the very Disney-ish singing and then the very sort of Broadway sets of it all just made it into this very saccharine experience. I feel like if you could just drop the singing and just have, sort of a middle budget movie about the Newsies strike, that would be interesting. Or keep the singing, but also tell me what an actual Newsies life is like, because their life seemed kind of not that bad. They're all staying in an orphanage. They have this great community. There's the orphanage guy, protects them from the refuge guy.
Yeah.
They seem to take a very lackadaisical view towards the work day. They don't seem to be that put out about it. It just doesn't, there's not a lot of grit to it, even though I know that the Newsies' life was a really rough life. And so
Christian Bale hadn't discovered grit yet. That came with...
True. I shouldn't have said grittiness because I do hate the word. But realism actually might be a better word. I felt like if it could have had a little bit more of that, and I think there were times when I felt like the Disneyfication of this story was getting in the way of actually telling what the story would be like. Like the kids don't curse. At one point, Dave says something to the Brooklyn guy, Spot, and Spot's like, "What is this guy? A walking mouth?" And I'm like, a walking mouth? What kind of fucking insult is that? I don't know. This whole thing just seems like it doesn't gel in a way that I would like. And it was directed by the guy who brought us High School Musical 3, so I don't know how that could have happened. Kenny Ortega, you're usually so gritty.
Also, This Is It, starring Michael Jackson.
Yes, another great person from history, like Joseph Pulitzer. Joseph Pulitzer's in hell, going, "Don't
talk
drag me
about
into this."
There's no credible evidence that I had.
Anyone.
Yeah,
you're the one who said all those things about the Newsies at the start of this podcast.
You made it weird, not me. I disagree. Your inner child is not an idiot. I thought this was pretty fun. It's not like my new favorite musical or anything, but I thought the songs were pretty fun. There's a couple of duds. There's a lot of, kid acting, kids singing, kids acting and singing in accents that you have to get through. But I thought
you're
they
selling
did a
me
nice
on the
job.
movie now.
Christian Bale, I thought, did a pretty good job. He's pretty charismatic as Jack. The little buddy who's not Kirk Cameron, but looks a lot like Kirk Cameron and a younger.
Yeah, David. I didn't catch that. Hold on. I got it up here. Oh. David Moscow plays David Jacobs.
Makes sense. I always wonder when the character's the same name as the actor. Is that something they did where they're like, you know what? We're just going to change the name of the character, okay? So when you say David...
Who's the boss? They pull the Who's the Boss, and we're like, you know what? Your name is Tony, too. Your character's name is Tony. Because you keep looking around whenever someone says Mark. We're just going to call the character Tony.
That's fine. Are we good? Kevin Costner? Don't worry about the accent. Drop the accent.
He's not going to be Danza. He's not going to be Tony Danza. That's too confusing. You were already in Taxi. You're already a celebrity. In this universe, Tony Danza is a celebrity, too. We're going to call him Tony. We're not going to call him Tony Danza.
I know you didn't like the songs, but I thought some of them are pretty catchy. I think King of New York, if you get a song or two out of a musical that you can, snap your fingers to and sing after the movie, I think that's a pretty good ratio. Like, obviously, more is better, but, I'm not whistling Santa Fe, but, it's like I got the idea of what they were doing here. I do think, it was very Disney-fied, but I also think this story is really interesting. I would say this is a staunchly pro-union podcast, so maybe there's some bias here, but like I think it's an interesting story, and I think it's just really, I do agree that I would like to have seen more. I don't want to see kids suffering, but I want to see why they feel, this was a breaking point. It wasn't like their life was fine,
right,
and then they jack the price of the paper, and then, all of a sudden they have a problem. Because,
and I agree it's an interesting story. I just don't think it's a well-told story.
Sure, yeah. Well, and the actual resolution is even a little bit disappointing because they didn't drop the price. The resolution of the real strike was that they just agreed to buy back papers they didn't sell, so they wouldn't, lose a bunch, which is a compromise of sorts. So they still have to put out more money on the front end, but whatever. But I thought it was pretty fun. I thought Bill Pullman did fine. I thought Anne Margaret was weirdly used, but I generally like her. And I thought Robert Duvall was a revelation, but a weird revelation that I didn't really need. But sure. So yeah, I thought You're in Child's Not Any. I like it. I liked it. I would not add this on my to watch every year list or anything like that, but I'm interested in watching the Broadway version they have out now.
Does it use these songs?
I don't know. Probably.
Well, it's on Disney Plus. You can watch it and report back.
Yeah. What do you think, everybody? Email us, yourinnerchildisanidiot@gmail.com. You can leave us a voicemail or text message us 615-576-0525. You can find us on all social media, your Instagram, your Facebook. We want to thank our patrons for supporting our show, including...
Jackson has an unhealthy obsession with Damon.
The elusive fan Gromkin.
The supreme ruler of this podcast.
These are getting elaborate shit on the cartouche.
I don't even know what half of these mean, except for the first one, which is a full sentence. It has a subject and a predicate and a direct object, which is me.
Your favorite kind of sentence.
Kevin from Cleveland.
Josh Frigo.
Dramatically placed hot dog.
Travis Vance.
Hizoner the mayor.
Dan McIntyre.
Oh, you know what we're supposed to be doing?
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Beth Surmont.
David Mort.
Jonathon Day.
Just cuz.
Scalfasaurus.
Dr. Malcolm's Heaving Bosom.
Tyler Richardson over here.
Captain Jean-Luc Picard. I imagine he wouldn't get Jean right.
Right, yeah, they wouldn't be throwing the French accent in there. Damon's all... Wait,
so you got
to do both at the same time. I strained my neck. Hey, it's Damon's Australian accent over here. I actually am slipping into Goodfellas, actually. I've got to be careful. I have to stick strictly to Bugs Bunny. Yeah, Damon's Australian accent.
T. Smith.
Karen Curd.
Lindsey Nell over here.
The Zesty.
Jeremy Powlen.
Particle Man.
Larissa Maestro.
And Heather Tuggle.
Thank you all very, very much. I said y'all? I said thank y'all? No, you can't do that. You can't.
Your accent coach is going to get on you for that one.
Her name is Rebecca. She's a dialect coach, and she's wonderful. She doesn't have much to work with. That's the problem. So Damon is just going to go ahead and do the dance to seize the day while I count eights for him. And a 1, and a 2, and a 3, and a 4. And 1, 2,
Do I go on 1 or do we go on 2?
1, 2, 3, 4. We're halfway
sorry,
through it.
let's just go ahead and...
1, 2, 3,
oh,
4,
I missed it again.
5, 6, 7,
if we
8.
could just
1, 2,
loop
3,
the tape
4.
back. Okay.
Step, ball, change, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.